Welcome back. As employees return to the workplace, they are noticing their favorite lunch items may cost more than they remember. Organization Square reveals data on the rising prices and what they're calling lunchflation. Joining me to discuss the new trend is Executive Director of New York City Hospitality Alliance, Andrew Rigie. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, restaurants and food services have been amongst those hardest hit businesses over the past few years. Can you detail how they've been affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, New York's hospitality industry has been devastated by COVID. We've lost thousands of restaurants and bars. We don't have an exact number yet, but it's been devastating. And so many, unfortunately, are still teetering on the edge of survival. About 65% of restaurants in New York that applied for the federal restaurant revitalization fund grant were shut out when the money was quickly exhausted. So we're urging Congress to replenish that fund so these small businesses can get the support that they need. And in New York City alone, we're still about 60,000 jobs short in our city's restaurants and bars compared to pre-pandemic employment levels. And there's still a lot of uncertainty. I think the thing we've learned throughout the pandemic is the only thing that's certain is that everything is going to be uncertain, and our restaurants and hospitality businesses are going to continue to have to do that pivot word that everyone's really been talking about over the past 2 years.
Now, I understand that we're also experiencing a supply chain shortage. How is this affecting restaurants?
This has been really tough for this people that are actually building out new restaurants because there were vacant storefronts throughout the city. So it actually created an opportunity. Some people's crisis became an opportunity for others. So people that are ordering different types of equipment, kitchen equipment, tiles, and all these other materials are facing significant supply chain issues and delays in getting what they need. And then food costs have skyrocketed. And it's really across the board. It's not just one or two products where you can find a supplement for it. It's things like butter and oil that have to go in nearly every dish, and things like gloves that used to cost somewhere around $20 a case, now upwards of $100.
So like you said, we're seeing these prices and people are calling it lunchflation. Can you explain why the prices are so high at this time?
Yeah, unfortunately, for many years, even predating the pandemic, restaurant meals cost a lot less than they really should. And there's a lot of different pressures and a lot of different reasons for that. But now what we're seeing is consumers are at many restaurants price sensitive. So restaurants are still unable to fully increase their prices, but they have to increase them to some degree and do that balancing act to not lose business because of labor costs have skyrocketed. And we still have this labor shortage. Many restaurants are operating short staffed, and all the food products and everything else that they're purchasing has continued to go up. And they have all of this pandemic related debt. So the only way that they can try to keep their doors open, hopefully pay back some of this debt, pay everyone, pay their vendors, their employees, is to increase menu prices. And I think we're seeing that at many places.
Yeah, so I've experienced that myself. And I paid like about $6 for a sandwich that normally costs like $4. Is this something that I should have expected? Should we all have expected the prices to go up eventually?
Food prices are going to go up. For a long time, there have been so much competition among different restaurants, different types of restaurants. Consumers are definitely price sensitive. There's only so much someone wants to pay for a sandwich or a bowl of pasta or pizza before they go, oh, you know what? That seems pretty expensive. And you have options. You can pack food at home, bring it into the office, or if you're at home, prepare food. So it's one of those luxury items. It's not something like sneakers where no one's, I guess very few people are going to make their own sneakers at home, but they can make their sandwich at home. So I think it's expected, but we're really encouraging people that have the means to do it to go out, spend the extra money, because you'll get a great meal, number one. Number two, we need these small businesses to be able to recover. We need them to be able to employ New Yorkers because it's all part of this larger economic ecosystem. But let's hope at some point we don't continue to see all these operating costs go up and up and up, so it alleviates some of the pressure on restaurants to increase their menu prices.
Now, is this a nationwide problem or is this something primarily affecting New Yorkers?
No, this is definitely nationwide. I think it's global. I think the war in Ukraine with Russia, that's having an impact as well. You had different issues in different places with different crops as well. And I think what we've seen from COVID is it's really just impacted society in so many different ways. And we're really seeing those impacts play out in so many different ways. And one of them is the cost to produce a restaurant meal, a restaurant experience. Food costs, labor costs are very, very high in the restaurant industry. And the profit margins, if there is any profit, are very, very small, especially with all this pandemic debt. So it's really kind of an impossible situation for so many restaurants to be in. Fortunately, people want to go out, they want to support their local restaurants, they want to socialize, and food and restaurant is really part of the New York culture in so many ways
Right.
that thankfully people are going out, but we can also see people not only spending less, but spending differently, which also has an impact.
Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Consumer Price Index surged 7.9% in the year through February 2022. Is this the new normal, or will prices go back to something that looks a little bit more comfortable and familiar to everyone?
I think it's going to be quite some time before we really see all of these costs coming down. And I'm not sure long term what it will ultimately look like impacting the price of restaurant meals. I think it's going to take some time, putting aside just the index and all of this, that different restaurants have been differently impacted. So, for example, if you are one of the fortunate restaurants that got a grant through the Federal Restaurant Revitalization Fund, you are in a much better place financially, and you can afford to pay higher prices for the products you need, higher wages to all of your employees, and you may be able to keep your prices a bit lower versus a restaurant right next door or across the block that didn't get this relief and does not have some financial cushion. So they have more wage pressure, more food cost pressure on them to increase their prices. So you may see restaurants that are selling similar types of food right in the similar vicinity of each other, but having different prices. And that could be impacted by what kind of government relief one restaurant got versus another.
Now, how do restaurants and fast food services determine pricing just in general? Because I think even before lunchflation, sometimes people considered some of these meals a little bit pricey.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into it. I'd say a local restaurant that's sourcing locally from farmers upstate in New York, they may have a higher food cost versus a national or international chain that's buying significant bulk from broadline distributors, may be able to keep their prices down a little bit, and they're also trying to attract more of the cost conscious consumers. So I think, again, one of the challenges for restaurants is trying to keep their prices within a area that their customers will continue to patronize and visit their restaurants while covering all their operating costs. Before the pandemic, I heard many full service restaurants were getting close to 40%, some even tip 40% labor costs as a percentage of their gross sales. And then you have restaurants up 20 to 35% of their food costs, depending on the type of cuisine that they serve, where they're purchasing their products. So as a total of their gross sales, these are huge percentages that are going to one, the product, and two, the labor. And don't forget, for most of these restaurant meals, there's a lot of labor that goes into producing these products and these meals.
So, how will lunchflation affect the many employees returning back to work?
Well, I think people are going to be, some people may be excited to go back into the office just to see their colleagues. Other people may not be happy because they're working remote. Other people may just want to go meet their friends for, happy hour at a bar after work, and they could be looking forward to that. But I think generally speaking, when people go to the office, if they haven't had a great meal at one of the restaurants that they remember, they'll want to go check it out. I think they could have potentially some sticker shock But at the end of the day, if they've been eating most of their meals at home, I think it'll be really nice for someone to go buy something at a local restaurant. And while they have gone up, I don't think they've gone up the way that gas has gone up, maybe that some other products and services have gone up. But I think the thing that we've also seen from the pandemic, there's a psychological aspect that we were told to be socially distant. And, restaurants are places we come together to socialize and you get an experience. So it's not just the food product you're paying for, it's the overall experience. And I think people will calculate that, I hope, into that and be willing to pay. And because there has been a lot of attention to the plight of the restaurant industry, I'm hoping that they are not only willing to pay for the meals, but also leave nice tips for the workers because they rely on this income for their livelihood. And they've been hit so hard, and so much has been asked of them during this pandemic, working in really an impossible and difficult situation.
So can you just tell us a little bit more about your social media and how people can stay up to date with you?
Absolutely. On Twitter, I'm at handle Andrew Rigie. That's ANDREW. Rigie, RIGIE. I'm at Political Foodie NYC on Instagram, and you can find the New York City Hospitality Alliance at the NYC Alliance on Instagram, on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're out there. And you can just go to our website, thenycalliance.org. We have an incredible community of restaurants, bars, nightclubs, and we've really been advocating and fighting for the support they need because we need our city's restaurants to recover, for New York City as a whole and the United States to recover. So we're there to serve them just like they're there to serve you. Hopefully your lunch, dinner, and maybe even breakfast.
Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
That's all for our show today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.